I think people forget what things were like before Trump, since he's such a, kind of ubiquitous presence, as Matt was saying. And for me, he also defines and is responsible for most of the changes we're discussing. But back in 2015, most of these news organizations were on the brink of collapse. Every MSNBC host was on the verge of being fired, a couple of months away from being fired because nobody was watching. The New York Times had severe financial difficulty. There was talk about whether they would have to declare bankruptcy because their balance sheet was so drowning in debt. And Trump saved them all. He saved the entire industry. They all owed their jobs, their second homes, the ability to pay off their IRS debt to Donald Trump, because you can trace his emergence on the scene to when people started watching those programs again. And what they did was they rebranded as the resistance to Donald Trump. And they sacrificed any even pretense of journalistic function. They know, if you just look at polling data, that 95% of the people who watch MSNBC and 93% of the people who read the New York Times and trust it identify as Democrats. So there's a completely polarized media. One of the kind of non-media examples is the ACLU. There was an article in 2015 in the ACLU about the ACLU in the Washington Post that they were had to engage in mass layoffs of their staff because they had no money. Trump gets inaugurated. They start tweeting, every day, "We'll see you in court, Mr. Trump," and stimulating the, kind of G zones of every liberal. And suddenly they're drowning in money, millions and millions of dollars, building, the ACLU, it's always financially struggled. And as a result, they're completely captive now to that kind of an audience. I have a friend, I had a friend, who was a host of an MSNBC show, and they once told me that they don't get show by show ratings, they get segment by segment ratings. And ever since Trump, they told me the minute you put on anybody who's critical of the Democratic Party anyway, you can just see the audience completely disappear, which you can imagine a person in that position, what an enforcement mechanism that is, to know that they have a salary and kids and the need to pay for college and their mortgage. And they know if they do anything that deviates at all from Democratic Party doctrine, they're going to lose their audience. The New York Times knows that. The ACLU knows that. And so, I think it's not just that they've lost their credibility and can't get it back, which is absolutely true, as Matt said. It's also that they're now captive to this kind of prison cell that they built for themselves, chasing the sugar high that Trump provided.
Just really quickly, I got to tell a story. In the middle of all this phenomenon, reporters were arguing about whether or not we should be covering him less because maybe we had helped him get the nomination. I covered Trump's campaign, and this was a hot topic on the bus at the time. But then it was sort of decided that, he's just making us all so much money. Let's just go with it. And I remember being in Indianapolis when Trump sewed up the nomination by beating Cruz, who still had a mathematical chance of winning, I guess, if he had done well there. But Trump, if you remember, during that particular race, accused Cruz of being the Zodiac Killer, which was hilarious because Cruz was born 2 years after the killings ended. But there was one reporter I know who actually got the nerve up to ask, I believe it was Cruz's wife, about the accusations. What do you have to say to the idea that your husband is the Zodiac Killer? And he's telling me the story about this afterwards, and he goes, I felt so dirty doing it, but I also felt so great. So I think that's where they were. They were in that space for a long time.